Hi everyone, I'm Leon Fers, and thank you very much for joining this mailing list. If you've been on the mailing list for a little while, you'll know a little bit about me, but if not, I am a PhD candidate studying generative AI in education, a consultant, and a best-selling author of practical AI strategies. And this month, throughout August, I'm releasing one video a week to go back to basics and look at all of the features of the most common platforms for Gen AI, including ChatGPT, which was last week's video, Google Gemini today, and Claude next week. Throughout these videos, what I'll be doing is explaining all of the basic features and comparing the free and the paid version in case you're trying to make a decision of one of those. Now, I've worked with thousands of educators over the last few years since the release of ChatGPT, and I know that one of the biggest issues is just finding the time to get your head around these technologies. The majority of educators that I talk to just haven't had the time, the inclination, or the resources to keep up with the constant changes of generative artificial intelligence. So hopefully this video will help you out with some of those basics. If you do enjoy the video, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email via the mailing list address, or you can leave a comment anywhere on my website or social media platforms, especially LinkedIn, which is where I spend most of my time. So I hope you enjoy this video, and please do share it if you find it useful. Okay, so first of all, I'm in the free version of Google Gemini here, and I'm going to try to do everything live in real time, so no speeding up on this video. We'll see how everything works. In the free version, we've got 2.5 Flash as our model up in the top corner here. We can also use a little of 2.5 Pro. We will run out of credits pretty quickly on the free version. We can't upgrade to AI Pro without paying for the privilege of doing that, so I'm going to leave that one for now. In the free version, I'm just going to leave 2.5 Flash on and also show you some of these tools down here. We can upload files, and these files can be images, PDFs, documents, CSV, spreadsheets, and so on. And we can connect Google Drive if we choose to do so. In the Tools menu, we can look at deep research, Canvas, images with Imagen, and guided learning, which is a brand new feature. And you'll notice that some of these are very, very similar to the features that I showed you last week in the ChatGPT video. Some of them even have the same names, like deep research mode and Canvas. Guided learning is a version of Google's study mode, which ChatGPT also released a couple of weeks ago. So at a very basic level, this thing works very much like ChatGPT. If I give a task like I'm planning a trip to a farm to help my children learn about animals, and we'll hit go, and it will very, very quickly respond. So if you're familiar with using something like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini is very, very similar. In its basic model, it responds very quickly, pretty basic responses, exactly the kind of thing that you might expect. Now, if I go into the tools again and turn on deep research mode, you'll see that on the immediate turn on, I want to either start a new chat or continue this conversation. So you can flick this on mid-conversation and get a more detailed response. So I'm going to turn that onto a new chat. And I'm going to say a slightly different prompt. I'm going to say plan a trip to Sydney for a family of 5 in August. Now, with the free version, you get a limited number of tries of deep research, and it does take a long time. If you watch my previous video on ChatGPT, you will see similarities in how long it takes, around about 8 to 15 minutes sometimes. So I'm not going to wait for the entire thing to finish. I'll just show you how it starts off. It gives you a research outline, and you can edit this if you like, so you can change the steps that it's going to follow. And then we hit Start Research. Now, whilst that's running in the background, we'll look at a couple of other features. Okay, if I hover over the side menu here, you'll see that it shows me some of my recent chats, just those two that I've just demonstrated. And we can also start a new chat. Now, deep research will continue working in the background, so we may not see it finish, but it's still there. Images with Imagen allows us to create an image of a home office, which is sort of where I'm standing working now, so that's why that popped into my head, along with the prompt at the bottom there. And you'll see again, like ChatGPT, like all of these things, it takes a little time to generate an image. It's a bit faster on the paid version than on the free version, which is pretty common for these platforms. But eventually we will get an image there. Whilst that's running in the background, I'm going to pop open a new tab. Okay, and we're going to look at Canvas. So Canvas, like the Canvas in OpenAI's project, is basically a coding tool. It gives us a few suggestions. So let's just grab one of these here for an example. Make a quiz app about space. And you can see very, very quickly it starts to write its code. Now, I found in general that Google Gemini's version of Canvas is comparable to, or sometimes even better than, ChatGPT's version, even in the free model. So if you are looking at building little apps or websites, very simple no-code things, then I've found Google's Gemini model to be pretty reliable there. All right, so it's given us a little quiz. All right, let's see how we go. And it's keeping track of the score. So pretty straightforward. We can look at the code and we can actually edit this directly. Okay, we can highlight parts of the code and go to Ask Gemini and put in a prompt directly. There's all kinds of things that we can do there. Now, one thing that I think is quite useful is using products like Canvas to just spin up very simple quizzes, but also to make simulations in things like mathematics, physics, biology, and so on. If you try to make a physics simulation, like an elevator simulation, you might have to tweak it backwards and forwards for a while to make it a little bit more sophisticated, but eventually you'll probably end up with something quite useful. Now, back over in our image generation, you can see that's pretty successfully made an image of a home office there. The ratio is a little bit distorted when I've made it bigger, but there's our square image. Okay, and when I demonstrate the paid version in a little while, you'll see that we can actually take those images and even turn them into short videos. Last feature in the free version I'm going to look at is this guided learning. I want to learn about home office design. So I'm just looking at it here. It's probably not the kind of thing that secondary students would be particularly interested in, but we'll see what it comes up with. And this mode, very much like ChatGPT's study mode, is designed to ask me questions in response rather than giving me direct answers. So something that's worth exploring, experimenting with. I wasn't particularly impressed with study mode when I first tried it out, but you could definitely point your students towards this product. Okay, so now I'm over in the paid version and I use the Pro account as part of my Google business account, the Workspace account. And that gives me access to a few more features, but as you can see, most of it looks the same. So in the drop-down, we have 2.5 Flash and Pro. I won't run out of Pro usage anywhere near as quickly as the free version. And in the tools, I also have videos with VO. So VO 3 allows you to create, at the moment, 8-second long videos with audio. And I'm just going to use one of their examples here. Let's say video of an animal watching TV. That's going to take a little while. So whilst that's running, I'll just pop open a new chat. Okay, and I'm going to just have a look at how this compares. So Gemini Pro is the reasoning model, and it's got the show thinking drop down, much like the reasoning model that we looked at in last week's video on ChatGPT. And we don't need to worry too much about this whole thinking process, this reasoning process. Remember, what's happening under the hood here is that it's iterating through, passing its responses back to itself, building on them, and giving something which is a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more thoughtful. So Google Gemini works very similar to ChatGPT's former O3 version. That's just been replaced by GPT-5, which has a thinking mode. Very, very similar kind of approach. Now, if we head back over to the video that we generated earlier, we've ended up with a video of a raccoon watching TV in a chair. So let's check that out. Okay, so there's our video. And we can do a few things with Google's VO. We can generate videos from still images. We can get pretty creative with how we prompt these things. I'm not going to get too down in the weeds with this yet, but if you do have access to the paid account, it's worth checking out. Now, earlier I mentioned deep research, and we started a research task in the free version. This is one that I ran earlier in the paid version, just so we can show you what the end product looks like. And it is a well-researched piece. I've asked it to look up key events in the state of Victoria in Australia in 1925. It's pulled out a timeline, a table. It's created a section by section report with drop downs. We can click these links. We can check that those websites actually exist and that they're not hallucinations. All of this is pretty well researched and well referenced. And I found that Google Gemini's deep research is just as good as ChatGPT's version, and perhaps something that you might have access to through a school license. Much more common for schools to have licenses than Google Gemini than OpenAI's products. And very interestingly, recently Google have added a few new features to this, including the ability to create web pages, infographics, quizzes, and audio overviews directly from this platform. So I made a few of these as examples, and if we open up the interactive history website, you see it's quite a nice little simple website that it's created from that research project. It's got a timeline down the left-hand side and a few nice features. When I asked it for an infographic, it did something quite similar, a little bit more infographic-y than a website. Okay, so we've got some of our information there about the Ford Motor Company, the Victorian Football League, and a few key points. And we can export this kind of thing into a HTML file and open it up in a web browser, or we can export it as a PDF. So one thing that I think Google Gemini does really well, perhaps even better than ChatGPT, is its interconnection between all of those different platforms. When we've created a report, we can open it up as a Google Doc, we can create a website and then actually move that over into Google Sites. We can use Google Sheets and all of these different things which operate natively within that Google ecosystem. Now, whilst I'm talking about Google Gemini, I want to give an honorable mention to NotebookLM. It's not strictly speaking part of Google Gemini. You don't access it from the same website. You go to notebooklm.google.com, but it is using the Gemini large language model under the hood, so it's worth looking at. And Google NotebookLM allows us to create these interactive notebooks using whatever materials we upload. It's worth a longer discussion. I'm just going to give you a very brief fly through. There's plenty of PD videos and information out there online about Google NotebookLM, so it's well worth checking out. But for example, you can add a source. Here I've added my free Rethinking Assessment ebook, which is a collection of about 200 pages worth of articles about assessment. And you can see it's provided a summary. We can generate an audio overview, a mind map, and we can even create a video overview. Now, I did make one of these video overviews. It wasn't super exciting. Here it is an example of that.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. You know, if you're an educator, you are right in the middle of this. We're talking about generative AI and how it's kind of forcing us all to completely rethink how we even assess learning. I mean, when tools like ChatGPT just exploded onto the scene, the reaction in education was, wow. It was instant.
And a little like the audio overview podcasts, which you may have seen earlier this year, Google's NotebookLM will generate conversations between a couple of different people. It will overlay those voices onto videos. It's still very much an emerging version of this technology, but it's something interesting and definitely worth keeping an eye on. Thank you very much. Hopefully you've learned something about Google's Gemini, both the free and the paid models from this video. And I know that one of the main objections to learning these technologies is that it moves so quickly and that it's overwhelming. So I really hope that these little videos are helping you to get back on track and learn some of the more recent features of these platforms. I'm going to do another video next week, and I'm going to be looking at Anthropic's Claude, which is a really powerful AI model that far fewer educators have used or even heard of in my experience. It's one that I use a lot. It's really good at writing tasks. It's really good at those coding and simulation-based tasks, like I demonstrated last week in the ChatGPT video. And all of these videos are coming out weekly during August and are now exclusive to people that are on my mailing list. So if you think that you've got colleagues who would enjoy these videos as well, please make sure you share the sign-up link to the mailing list with them. If you've got any questions, just send me an email. You can reply to the mailing list emails, or you can get in touch with me through my website at leonfurs.com. Thanks.